archive about something I get asked a lot. So this is, you're welcome to join me live and ask questions, but this is mostly so I can archive this and make it available later for people who have the same question. And the question is, Debbie, how did you get started in UX? So I often hint at the story, but I want to take some time to tell people the full story because it's a weird story and a long story. And I want to tell everybody that for those who are curious. If you're not curious, end the video. So let me start really, really, really far back. So I was born in 1972. That's true. I was born in 1972. I'm currently 47. I'll be 48 in 2020. And as a kid, I was that math science geek. And I was that kid who always wanted to decipher codes and figure out systems and build and rebuild things. I wasn't the kid who took apart the toaster, but I was the kid who wanted to learn everything I could. I was very studious and project minded. I locked myself in my room a lot and worked on projects. We got our first computer when I was about 13. I started on computers in 1979 at school. I was 7, not at school, a local college. For those of you who might be from New York, SUNY Farmingdale was offering coding classes for children. So when everyone says teach your kids to code, oh my God, that's so new and amazing. I was put in that class in 1979, and we were going to learn BASIC on a Commodore PET. And I was in love with this little computer that recorded programs to cassette tapes, and I still have some of them, and they sound like fax machines. So I was always that techie math science kid. And outside of that, I was always the kid who was doing a lot of charity work. Whenever I heard someone in my family had a disease, I wanted to go do the walkathon and the bikeathon and raise money for that. So I've always been a how can I help people and think about people person. Sure, I don't always get it right, but that's usually my main goal is to help someone in some way that's helpful to them. So, because of that, I'd always wanted to be a genetic researcher. I figured I can cure the world's diseases. Why not? So I entered college. I went to Tufts University in Boston, and I entered as a double major in chemistry and music. So I could do pre-med, and I was also a musician. That's really my first love. For those of you who know me or have been stuck doing karaoke with me, um, my school didn't have minors, so I started doing the pre-med courses, but they weren't really a good match to me. After doing so well in high school science classes, I got to college and somehow it fell apart. I was doing poorly in classes, and it was kind of I don't want to say it was a breakdown, but everyone joked it was a midlife crisis because I was figuring out at 19 that what I always thought I would do is not what I'm going to end up doing. So I dropped the science and I was almost done with the music major, and I still had like a year left of college. So I started taking wacky stuff. I started taking stuff that just interested me because I had all this spare time in my schedule. And I started taking cognitive psychology classes because I've always been interested in psychology and how people think and how they work, their minds work, and their motivations and their habits. I thought of myself as a pretty good judge of character, a pretty good person who could read people usually quite well. I was usually good at predicting some pretty strange things. So psychology interested me greatly. I started with Psych 1. And I think all in all, I took 3 psych classes because, again, it wasn't a major, it wasn't a minor, it was really just for kicks. And when I got out of college, I had a degree in music. So I have a bachelor's in music, knowing that was not going to necessarily be my career. Also, at the end of college, I had been going, in the summers, I had been going to audio engineering school where I learned to be an audio engineer. I got a certificate in audio engineering. So I did sound engineering. I had a home studio by then, and it was analog at the time. I went to school when we cut tape with a razor blade, and my home studio was analog. So, that's I graduated college in 93. And then I worked in the music business for a while, and I had two jobs in the music business. So I worked a weekday job at one place, and I worked a weekend job at another place. And the weekend job was mostly to make the weekday job help me forget it. It was not a good job, but it was my first job out of college, and we all had to start somewhere. So, in 1994, I'm at my weekend job, and a pretty famous dude comes in because it was a pretty famous recording studio owned by a band called Steely Dan that some people may know. It was Donald Fagen's recording studio co-owned with Gary Katz, their producer, and I was just the weekend manager there. And they had Roger Nichols there because he was going to be engineering their live album, which is totally not a live album. It's a fake live album. That's a much longer story. But yes, I actually worked there, and my name is actually in the thank yous. So weird little tidbit. I'm thanked in Steely Dan's Alive in America album. So Roger Nichols had this Mac, and I had a Mac at the time. And Roger Nichols owned every piece of software anyone could imagine. He was wonderful. He's unfortunately since passed away, but he copied every piece of software he had for me, illegally. But I had everything. I had Photoshop in 1994. So, of course, I start playing with Photoshop. Now, I've never been an artist. I'm a musician. I see that as my artistic talent. But I started playing with Photoshop, and it was amazing. I mean, oh my God, Photoshop in 1994. What is this? And then in early 95, a college friend called me and he goes, "You have to see this thing called the web, and you can make pages for it." Now, I'd gotten on email in 1992, and I was on CompuServe, for those who remember that, and loved that. So, like, the web, what? Um, Started going on the web, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And I think I stayed awake for almost a week straight, which is hard because I'm allergic to caffeine. And I taught myself HTML, mostly by downloading pages and kind of what's the word? Reverse engineering what I saw. I didn't buy a book, I didn't take a class. And so I was like, you know what? I bet people would pay people who know how to make these web pages. Like, I think this is going to be something. Now, I'm not an artist, so you couldn't really call me a web page designer. But I was going to make these things, and I wanted to make them for businesses and for myself. And so I started up a little company, and I found a guy online who lived near me, even though I didn't meet him until many years later. It was the original virtual company. And he, oddly enough, was an artist, a 3D renderer, and a CGI scripting guy. And together we were the company. And I was the face of the company. He never saw clients. He was very, very shy and introverted, but very talented and a real sweetie. And I'm always grateful to him. I paid him, of course, but I'm always grateful to him. And so I had a little website company, and I decided I should make websites based on what I learned in my psychology classes. I learned a little bit about how people parse information, how they use language, how they think, why they make certain choices. I had learned about Gestalt principles of perception. And so I was like, I should make websites with this in mind. And that was how I started. And I like to say it was UX before I knew what UX was. Of course, by then UX did exist, thanks to Don Norman and Nielsen and Tog and all those people. But I didn't know. I was 23 in 1995, and I was going to make websites for businesses. And but again, I'm not an artist, so I would strategize the websites. I would lay out the websites. I would plan the websites. I would strategize aspects of the business that I was dealing with. So I was coming at it from that angle. And I got some good local customers by partnering with an advertising agency. And so pretty quickly, I started getting some really nice customers, like a hospital department in New York City. And that was in like my first year or so. And that was exciting. And I was 23. Oh, but so between learning how to do the web stuff and starting the business, I traveled for about a month, and I was quitting my music business jobs and moving in with my grandmother. My grandfather had just passed, and my grandmother was my mother figure, and I was very happy to be living with her. But I traveled because I ended up getting hired to travel on a music tour that I had worked on actually at both of my jobs. Oddly enough, the same band came into both of my music business jobs. And it was this New York City jazz band called the Jazz Passengers. And they had a special guest vocalist named Debbie Harry from a band called Blondie. And they were going to go on a European tour with her, and they wanted a tour manager. And I was like, I think I can do that. I'm a highly organized person. I'm reliable. I don't smoke, drink, or do drugs. I can handle all this stuff. I was 23. And they were like, good, you're hired. And then they called back a couple of weeks later. They were like, Debbie Harry's really particular about her monitors. Do we have the budget to bring a sound engineer? I said, I'm a sound engineer. And they said, you're hired. So I went on tour for a month with Debbie Harry from Blondie and a great jazz band. Even though I don't like jazz, these guys were great, around Europe. And then came home and started a web design business. So, by now we're talking summer 1995. In 1996, I got a call from the Miss America organization who wanted to hire my company to do their website. This was unbelievable. I mean, it was really great. Whatever you think of the Miss America organization, love it, hate it. Obviously, those who have seen me and know me know that I'm a tomboy. Miss America is not my thing, but my contact there was a really smart, fantastic woman. Loved working with Carol. And so for 3 years, we were the official website company for the Miss America organization, even though it was still me and Ken. And I would go do the pageants. I had to get dressed up. I had to go to Saks Fifth Avenue and buy gowns, and bought Bruno Mali shoes, had to do my hair and makeup. And all the Texans would go, well, don't you clean up nice? And I'd be like, I think that's a compliment. So we started doing the Miss America organization website, and we started getting noticed. And that led to some more partnerships with some larger ad agencies, like in New York City, who got us some really great projects with what was then ING Barings and what was then Shearing Plow. We actually did the website for the Liberace Museum in Las Vegas, which has since closed. And and this is like 1996, 1997, 1998. Somebody came to us in 97 and said, I want to sell things on the internet, but I don't know how to do that. And I looked at these companies trying to sell you this shopping software. They want tens of thousands of dollars. Can you build something? Can you guys build me something? I said, of course we can. Now that was beyond Ken, so I ended up taking on a guy named Greg, who I think lived in Ohio. He was really wonderful. And this was like 97. And we actually custom built e-commerce websites before you could just get Shopify and customize it. So we started going real heavy into e-commerce, and we started getting a lot of custom e-commerce jobs. And again, I'm not an artist, so my job is to strategize with the client what they were shooting for and who their customers were and what their customers were trying to do. So I was trying to be very task-based about it, but admittedly, I didn't know about UX. So I wasn't doing good UX research. I wasn't doing good UX testing, but I was doing my best to take a kind of cognitive psych approach to information. What I realized later was information architecture and interaction design. And then Ken would do the art and code it up, and then Greg would do the really tough stuff, and the company just kept growing from there. And we did a lot of websites. We started doing a lot more e-commerce sites that were all customized and built. And in, gosh, I guess it was 2000, I had done a website for my local camera store, and the guy said to me, I'm hearing all about this eBay thing. do you think I could sell my cameras on eBay? And I said, well, sure, you can sell anything on eBay. You know, a lot of people sell used things, but there's no reason you can't sell your new cameras. And he also dealt in used cameras. And he's like, set something up for me. Come up with a strategy. Come up with a plan to sell my stuff on eBay. I said, no problem. So I came up with an entire strategy, plan, approach, idea for the website, strategy for the website. I had to train all of his staff on how to deal with kind of mail. They were used to taking phone orders, but they weren't used to orders coming in through the internet. And they certainly didn't know about eBay. This was 2000. So we devised an entire thing for them. And then we designed their eBay listing. And I had put a lot of thought into the design of an eBay listing. And by then I'd been an eBay shopper for, I guess, 3 or 4 years, and probably a bit of a heavy eBay shopper. So I felt very knowledgeable in what eBay listings looked like and the tasks you are looking to accomplish on the eBay website. And so we very deliberately designed his eBay listing to have certain information in a certain order based on what tasks people are normally trying to accomplish when they're on eBay. So I wanted to put information in order of what would be most compelling. And so I was laying out the eBay listing based on that. And he sold $1 million on eBay in his first year. And that got people's attention. That got eBay's attention. That got other people's attention. And he started selling $1 million, $2 million, and more per year on eBay for many years. I disconnected from him some years later, so I don't know what happened afterwards. But that got me some attention. And eBay started bringing me to their annual conferences, where like 10,000 sellers would come and hear talks, and there'd be a trade show floor, and they would trot me out to do a talk, a how-to talk on how to lay out your listings in such a way that they are more likely to hold attention and convert. And so I just found that I had a formula that just seemed to work time after time. And when it didn't work, the way that I would gauge whether or not it worked is we would put out a listing design, and then I would work with clients on what questions are you getting, and we would watch their questions, we would watch their feedback, and see what are the questions people are asking most. Whatever questions people are asking most, that's probably where they're having confusion, pain points. So let's redesign the listing to answer those questions before people even have them, because once they have them, we've slowed down the buying process. It wasn't compelling. They had doubts. They lost trust. So it was kind of an iterative process, and that went really well. And I presented at eBay conferences from, I don't know, 2000. That's a spam call. Excuse me. 2003 to 2008, something like that. I don't remember the exact years, but I've got it written down somewhere, but it was something like that. And they were having me do sometimes 3, 4, 5 talks at the conferences on slightly different topics, all about, sometimes it was about your branding. Sometimes it was about your information, your listing design. And out of all the people who worked at eBay, they trotted me out, and I didn't work at eBay. In 2007, I decided to try a very, very radically different listing design for a seller named Ms. Kell. It was like MSSSKEL. She sold like beauty products, makeup, and stuff like that. Really nice woman. I tried to say no to really not nice people. So we had wonderful clients that we loved. By this time, I had like 10 people working for me. We were growing, and it was a beautiful thing, all distributed. Everybody, I'd never even met many of the people who worked for me. They were great. 2007, we designed the Miss Kell eBay listing design. And I said, what we now have statistics that show that people spend very little time on an eBay listing. They really don't pay attention. What can I do to make people, how can I beat the odds? How can I design something that holds people's attention? Because I think eBay had a statistic that was something like the average person spends 2 seconds on an eBay listing and then hits their back button. I wanted to beat those odds. So no, this couldn't have been 2000. It might have been 2007. Then, so we designed this thing for Miss Kell, and I said, what if the listing was actually a story? Like, what if we told the story from the top to the bottom, from like, here's the item to shipping policies and payment policies and contact us and return policies. What if there was like a story? And what if this was like over visually designed? What if this was like so visually designed you couldn't look away from it because it was just fantastic? And people thought that was weird. And I was like, let's try it. You know, if it doesn't work for Miss Kell, we'll make her something else and we won't charge her. Like, it's just going to be an experiment. Miss Kell was cool with it. So we designed this huge long thing. I don't know if she still uses it. I know eBay deprecated a lot of the HTML people were allowed to put in their listings. And of course, our listings were all HTML. So we designed this huge long thing where as you scroll down the page, we got this stock illustration of this woman. And what we did, we actually Frankensteined a woman's head, stock illustration of a woman's head on a different illustration of a woman's body. We wrote Miss Kell on her shirt. And but she was the height of the listing. It was this giant woman, and next to her were like little compartments with different aspects of information about the product, the policies, the seller, again, ordered in the order that I had found was the most compelling. And we put this out there for Miss Kell, and her sales went crazy because she had a baseline knowledge of how her sales went. And I think her sales were like 6x. It was like some crazy thing where people, and she started getting like love notes, like, hey, I bought this blush from you, but oh my God, your listing is so awesome. I've told all my friends about it. And I said, okay, wait a minute, we've got something here. And like, not only have we, it was like viral of the time, it was like, this eBay listing is so cool and so different from everything else that I have to tell people about it. When have you ever said that? So we had something really special going on, and our clients, and word got around, eBay perked up, eBay sellers perked up, and we charged very little. We charged a flat fee at the time. I think we were charging people $3,000 for an eBay listing template that they could use over and over again with no limits, and a little eBay store design, which is basically a header. And we got lots of business from it. I think our best year we did 100 of those. And again, I had a nice little growing company of highly talented people who worked from their home. And it caught the eye at some point of Seth Godin. Many of you guys know Seth Godin as a fantastic author and speaker on topics of marketing. He's definitely someone to check out and follow. And I don't remember how I ended up connecting with him, but he was working on a book at the time called Purple Cow, companies that make other companies remarkable. And I was like, I do that. I make other companies remarkable. I've got a pile of them. And I don't remember whether I met him in person or if this was over email. I think I met him in person, but this is so long ago. I don't remember. I don't remember. I also have to look at what year his Purple Cow book came out, because that would put some of this in context. Purple Cow, the old edition, not the new edition. I was in the first edition. Let me see if Amazon will tell me what year that was. 2007. So yeah, I must have just done Miss Kell and a couple of the other ones and already saw some strong results. And I ran into him somewhere and I was like, you have to see this thing I'm doing. It's beyond explanation. Most of my clients are growing 3 to 6x. They keep growing. We have all these ways that we're measuring this. And check this out. And I showed him a couple of our listings, and I don't remember if I had them like printed out, like as a book I was showing at a trade show. I really don't remember, but I showed him a couple of things and he goes, these are ridiculous. Like this shouldn't work at all. I said, it's working. We are measuring these metrics in like 3 different ways. These people are insanely growing their business. And he added a chapter to Purple Cow just for my company. So he added because Purple Cow was like companies that will make other companies remarkable, and it was arranged by like what industry this company worked in. And just for us, he added online auctions. and my company is the only company in that chapter. I don't even remember what it says. I've got the book in my storage room somewhere, but it's like, oh my God, Seth Godin just wrote about me. All right. Now, meanwhile, at this point, I still have not really heard much about formalized UX. I was still kind of doing my own cowboy thing where I'm strategizing sites and listings and doing all these things based on customer behavior and my knowledge of customer behavior. And yes, it wasn't fantastic UX, but it worked really well, and my information architecture and interaction design worked really well. Could they have been better? Probably. Were they a bit informal? Absolutely. I still hadn't read a UX book or done anything. And in 2008, I got called in by an ad agency in Chicago who wanted a subject matter expert on eBay, e-commerce, online selling. They called me in to consult on a big project they were doing for a startup that was looking to spend zillions in trying to like compete against eBay or something. And they brought me in and they wanted some layouts done. And I was like, yeah, I can do some mock-ups. And the woman's like, well, I want wireframes. And I was like, what's a wireframe? And the woman started shouting at me. How can you be doing this and you don't even know what a wireframe is? And I was like, these things I'm doing have names? Like, where have I been? Oh, I've been hiding in my own little world of my own agency for however many years now, 13 years. Oh my God, these things I'm doing have names. I'd better get up to speed really fast. And I spent some time, this is 2008, I spent some time starting to look up everything I could. And I don't remember buying books, but I remember researching like mad to try to learn like what is this? What am I doing? And what are these things called? And how could I do it better? And so that was 2008. But those of you who were there for 2008 will also remember that was when the big recession hit. And it hit everybody, including eBay sellers. My only eBay sellers who survived that sold car parts because the economy was so bad, you were more likely to fix a car than get a new car or used car. So my company, which was called As Was, which is a longer story, was in trouble. But in 2009, one of the other vendors in the eBay space, they had software where people could organize their items and sell on eBay. They wanted something really innovative that would push them ahead of the competition. And they hired me to come up with something their system could do that had never been done before in the eBay space, that would push technology, and that's what I did. And I invented something for them, and it was their flagship feature for 6 years. I don't know. It might. I didn't check if it's still on their website, but I checked many years later, and they were still plugging it on their homepage. Like, our thing does this, and I had invented this way to combine. There's another company that did eBay data, and they had just all kinds of crazy data on like what categories, what items were listed, what they sold for. So they could crazy crunch numbers and tell you like, oh, do you have this pen? Like, this pen is likely to sell for this, and you should list it in this category for more success. And I said, why don't we integrate that into the listing process so that as your software is having people set up a new item to sell, we are quickly pinging this company's software system and giving people helpful contextual suggestions in the moment, so that they can make better choices about their listing based on the data and statistics that are out there, what it should be priced, what category it should be in, best keywords to use, blah, blah, blah. And I wireframed that and helped them make the partnership with the data company because I had a good relationship with them, and did that thing. 2009, eBay called me into their offices and said, we have a problem we don't know how to solve. Meanwhile, I was not being paid for this, but I did have to show up. And they said, we can't fix this problem where people spend 2 seconds on an eBay listing and then hit the back button. And we hear nobody knows more about eBay shopper behavior than you. So what do you think's going on? Now, again, I was still learning about UX. I didn't say something clever like, let's spin up UX research to determine customer behavior. Instead, I looked at what they were talking about and analyzed what they gave me. And I said, well, it seems pretty obvious to me that people are hopping into your listings to just check the very top of the page where you have the shipping price and the timing of the shipping and the shipping method, because your search results don't say how or when am I going to get this. And by now we're all ordering from Amazon. We know we're going to get it in 2 days. We know it's Prime free or whatever. eBay still wasn't telling you when you were going to get stuff or how or what it was going to cost. You had to go into the listing, then you had to go back out to search results to find something else. I said, that's probably your problem. Let me wireframe you what your search results should look like so that this information can be surfaced and answer people's questions before they have questions and doubts and have to hit what they were calling pogo stick in and out of a listing. So I wireframed some search results for them that would put this information out there. And they were like, oh, no, I don't think we want to do that. It's just going to hit our own API too much. And I'm like, but it would solve your problem. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to hit our own API. We don't want to make another call to the API. And I'm like, okay. And if you look at eBay search results now, they still don't tell you. They still don't tell you like how you're going to get it, when you're going to get it, stuff like that. I think it might say shipping price, but I don't think it says when and how. So wah, wah. They called me in another time. There was something else. I don't remember what it was, but there was something about the individual item page that they were like, oh, we find that people are scrolling past the top of our page. So the top of the eBay page, the seller couldn't put in. It was, the seller information and the price or the bid now or the buy it or the shipping information, the return policy. They're like, we find that people are getting this page and immediately scrolling past that. And then they don't know that. And then they're unsure. And sometimes they ask the seller stupid questions. And sometimes they have to scroll back up to buy, like, what should we do? And I said, well, we've got some neat things we can do with JavaScript in the Z-axis now since 2009. I said, why don't we pin this thing? Why don't we pin something to the bottom of the page, where the bottom of the page always has a couple of key pieces of information about the item, like the price or the current bid, a buy it now or bid now button for an action, and a couple of little things to know about shipping, timing, and pricing. And it'll just be pinned to the bottom. And that way, no matter where people scroll, they'll be able to quickly get back to bidding and buying without having to scroll back up. And they actually said to me, that's too innovative. They said, we haven't seen that yet on any websites. Like, that's just too weird. That doesn't make sense. And we don't like it and blah, blah, blah. So I took all my mock-ups and my prototype and whatever, and I put it on my blog. And I said, hey, here's something I recommended to eBay. And so it's like somewhere in an archive, like 2009, Deb recommends pinned bottom panel, which now is on like a zillion billion sites. So you wouldn't say it's innovative now, but evidently it was scary in 2009. So I'm still learning about formalized UX and some of this other stuff. Yeah, see, I told you this story was going to be long. And blame Joe, who asked the question. And so I'm learning about UX, and I say, you know what? I've got all this really interesting experience and great track record, but I've never had a corporate job. And I think if I want to be taken more seriously, I'm just going to need some corporate stuff on my resume. So I think I'll move to the San Francisco area, and I'll try to get some regular jobs, even though I love running my own agency and business, and turn my resume into something. So I got to the Bay Area in super late, like November, December, early December 2010, as 2010 was becoming 2011. And in January, February 2011, I was like, all right, now that I'm learning about this UX stuff, I got to learn some tools. What tools should I learn? And people were using OmniGraffle and Illustrator, and but I'm not an artist, so Illustrator was never comfortable for me, even though I had it and sometimes I'd use it. And OmniGraffle looked like a mess, so I spent some time doing competitive analysis, looking at different tools, and I decided the tool that I'm going to learn is Axure. So I taught myself Axure in February 2011 and got good at it pretty fast with a lot of help from the Axure support team, and ended up getting a job that year working for a startup in the construction business. they were kind of making a SaaS for construction workers, and SaaS was a good match to me. So I worked for them for most of the year as kind of a freelancer, doing Axure stuff and a lot of interaction design. And I did start doing user interviews and user testing. I started doing live moderated testing, moderating it myself. So somewhere along the line in that year or so, I had picked up a lot more information on how to do this stuff. I think it was mostly from online, reading stuff online. I don't think I had bought a book, and I don't think I had taken a course. So it was just a mountain of reading online and meeting new people. I moved to San Francisco, started going to meetups related to UX, started getting to know people, checking out what they did, and just trying to be a sponge. And and by the way, I'm telling this story and it's a live stream. If anybody has questions, you're welcome to ask them. But hopefully I'm covering most of what you guys would want to know about how did I get here, even though it is the very long version. I'm up to 35 minutes. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. It's now drinking game. So that, that brings, so I worked for that startup. I went into debt working for that startup. It was not fantastically, it wasn't a long enough job to support what living in the San Francisco area cost. So I started putting stuff out to recruiters, and I had a resume online. I had a portfolio. So I had Axure examples, especially from this startup that I had worked with. I had my previous examples from all the eBay and e-commerce stuff that I had done. I had some nice feathers in my cap and lots of good metrics to show that my stuff tended to work very well. And nobody would talk to me. I couldn't get an interview. Recruiters told me my history was weird. Recruiters would tell me, you're nobody. They literally, I had phone calls with people who said, you're nobody. You don't have Google, Apple, or TiVo. Remember TiVo? You don't have Google, Apple, or TiVo on your resume. Nobody's going to want you. And I said, how long do you think it's going to take for me to build my way up to be somebody? And they were like, oh, 3 years at least. And I said, well, fine, I'm going to do it. I had recruiters tell me, your website is weird. Because I had designed a very silly website. I had made my website look like annotated wireframes. So was that weird? Yes. Was it thematic? Yes. Am I a great artist? Definitely not. But I loved my own website. And my website looked like annotated wireframes, and I thought that was cool. And they were like, that's weird, and change it. I was literally told, go look at other UX workers' websites and portfolios and just make yours look like theirs. And I said, no, because I'm not like them. No one's like me. We're all unique. I'm me. And people are either going to want me as I am, or they're not going to want me at all. Still true today. And I'm going to leave up my wacky website. And I just did my best to keep connecting with recruiters. One day, I got a call from Lisa Von Olstadt, who worked at Aquint for 20 years and is now, according to LinkedIn, she's now at Intuit. And she calls me up and she says, hey, I saw your stuff. You're really good. But I know you're kind of starting out here. So I have a problem. I have a weird job that I can't fill, and I'm wondering if you want it. And I'm thinking, it doesn't sound very good, but okay, tell me more. And she said, I have a 3-month contract, but it's guaranteed to not be renewed because it's a transition period where this company is moving their jobs overseas. So you're kind of filling in while basically they're laying everybody off. So you're going to go to a workplace where people are going to be fired every week. You're going to be there 3 months to fill in on some projects, and then they're going to send your job to either China or Japan. You are definitely not going to get renewed at this contract, and the contract pays very little. And I said, well, yeah, I can see why you're having some trouble filling that. Tell me more. I said, who is this for? And she said, Sony Ericsson. And I said, I'll take it. Get me an interview. She said, yeah, Sony Mobile bought out Sony Ericsson. It's Swedish versus the Japanese, and everyone's being fired and whatever, and it's really ugly there. And but somebody's got to do the work until this all shifts over. I said, just get me an interview. I'll do what I can. And that was Martin, I guess Martin Granstrom. One of the best bosses I have had. What a wonderful guy. I wish I had done better work for him at the time. I was just starting out, but we all remember our first job, our junior job. And yeah. So I showed him my portfolio. I showed him my actual work, my startup work, my stuff before that. And I just said to him, look, I'm new in this town. You would be my first real job here. I promise I will give you 200% and I will do everything I can to make you happy for the 3 months I'm going to be here. I want to do great work for you and pass it on to whoever's going to take over this job. Please give me a chance. That was pretty much literally what I said in my interview. He said, okay, let's do it. And I was like, okay, I work at Sony. And this was early 2012. And I did some lovely work at Sony. I did some honestly pretty mediocre work at Sony. I had some fantastic fights with a product manager who I won't name. I met some wonderful people who I still completely love and admire, like my boss Martin and the fantastic Takahiro, who I can't keep up with. He keeps working somewhere else. Last time I checked, he was at Splunk. Where is he now? Hold on. Where does Takahiro work? But Takahiro is just a big talent and a big personality, and what an honor to know him. Splunk. So met wonderful people, and Martin gave me a chance. And really, I thank Lisa from Aquint for finding my stuff and believing that there was something I could do, and Martin for not only giving me a chance but backing me up when I fought the product manager. I would say, the product manager has a bad idea. I don't want to wireframe it. And he would say, and you don't have to. You don't have to wireframe a bad idea. If you're fighting with him, you send him to me. And I would send the product manager to Martin, and they would be fighting, yelling at each other in Swedish. And I would just be like, I don't know what's happening here. And the amazing thing about that was, once I had Sony on my resume, the phone never stopped ringing. That was it. I had worked my way up in a much shorter time because I had a recognized name. I think that was really it. I didn't have like unknowns, when I had unknown startup X, that was a stepping stone. But once I had Sony on there, I started getting calls. And I got called by a recruiter who said, hey, heard your Sony contract's going to be winding up in April. We want to put you at Wells Fargo in San Francisco on the mobile UX team. Why mobile UX? Because I just worked at Sony Mobile and I was designing for Android phones, because that's what Sony Mobile made. And I'm an Android fangirl myself. So I already had mobile experience in early 2012. And they were like, Wells Fargo wants you on the specialized mobile UX team, and it pays X more than you're making at Sony. So I'm already stepping up. And I said, yes. I got to work with the greatest people there. So many wonderful people that I still love. My amazing boss, George, who is still somewhere at Wells Fargo. Jen Kuo, one of the few true unicorns I know, someone amazing at art and truly good at UX. Terry, Jenna, Jenna's at Zillow, I think now. I said Terry. I'm blanking now. Rod, so many wonderful people at Wells Fargo. I was so lucky to work with really fantastic talents and personalities. And I was there about 7 months. And then they were cutting the contracts short because they didn't understand. Some boss didn't understand why we had a specialized mobile team. Can't everybody do mobile design? Take a look at Wells Fargo stuff now. You tell me. So I started working at agencies after that, and at a higher rate than I was getting at Wells Fargo. And suddenly I was something and I was someone and I was somewhere, because my resume in 2012 had Sony and Wells Fargo on it, and the phone never stopped ringing. So when people ask me, how did you get into UX? It's not a short story. It's ended up like an hour. I hope some of you have had extensive alcohol during this. I actually don't drink. I'm working on a on a protein shake for dinner. Um, it is a very long story, and it's why I always say, like, it's a long story, but I got into UX in this really weird way. And so I am one of those people who will say, like, well, I was kind of doing UX before it was UX, but I'm not lying to you. It wasn't a jewelry business that I'm pretending was UX. It wasn't selling clothes at the mall that I'm pretending was UX. It wasn't something else. Yes, it wasn't formalized. Yes, I wasn't doing the best job I could have. I was still growing and learning. But I started with a foundation in cognitive psychology and a deep need to understand people's behaviors and tasks. And I went from there. And so every step I took was a step that was important. I learned HTML, but I don't code anymore. I pay people to code. So I never did art. I can push around art. I have done a lot of art direction. So I have ideas, and obviously I have standards for art. I care about accessibility. I care about color theory. I care about consistency, readability, usability. But for some reason, I can't bring my own stuff to life. And you can tell this when you go to my websites, because I did them. And my websites are extremely simplistic and low on eye candy. And that's just because that's what I do. And I don't want to pay someone to make it better. But someday I'll have spare money and I'll pay someone to make it better. Um, and I think I know who that'll be. But uh, that's just me. So I started teaching and training in 1995. I was teaching local school teachers how to write HTML and stop stealing things off the web. I started speaking at conferences and events when eBay pulled me in 2003-ish to speak to thousands of eBay sellers. I've just been in some right places at some right times, and I had enough knowledge, skill, fast learning, open mind. When I learned this is called wireframe, now it's a wireframe. I didn't keep calling it what I was calling it, which was a mock-up. Now I know a mock-up is something different. I just kept learning, then I worked at agencies. I worked at Constant Contact. I worked at, most of you know, I worked at, contracted at Macy's.com for 2 years, on the technology side, not in the store. I did a lot of small project work for agencies. I did some stuff for Sephora. Fjord had me do some stuff for Kohl's department stores in America. I ended up doing a bunch of freelancing for Oracle, microscopic amount for Cisco. So I don't even remember who's on my resume at this point, but I've done lots of startup work. I've done lots of Fortune 500 work. I've done lots of agency work. And very often I've been the only UX person on the project. So in 2013, I spent 6 months working with an agency in San Francisco. They had a client that was a financial institution that needed a complete website redesign and reorganization. There was like a kind of like a insurance and investment and employee benefit kind of monster financial company. And I was the only person on the project, other than we had like an artist and a writer and an account manager, and I was doing all the UX. So I was doing research, and I was doing. So I did all the research. I did the interviews. I did 30 user interviews to create personas. And I'll never forget one of the interviews. I found out the guy and I had grown up in the same town. And for some reason, he decided that I was as much of a hooligan as he was. And he starts, and we're recording these interviews, and we told him this. And out of nowhere, I'm like, and tell me about how your clients come to the website, use the website. And he goes, I bet I smoked pot with your grandmother. And I was like, surely not. And this is being recorded, and probably my uncle. I was like, okay, I think we have to throw this. This is a guy who I was like, tell me about your usage of the website. And he would go, take everything off that's red, make it blue. I was like, oh, I got to throw this one out. So I did 30 interviews, one of them terrible, built personas. The personas were great. So by 2013, I'm doing a lot of formalized UX work as a T-shaped practitioner, calling things by the right names, doing things the right ways, etc. So, and from there, I started being kind of the Mary Poppins around San Francisco when people knew they needed like one person who could come in and attack a project and eat it for breakfast and acture it to death with fantastically realistic prototypes that are ready for socializing and user testing and development. My phone rang off the hook. My email rang off the hook. Whenever a job description said acture, my email rang off the hook. And then finally I got lucky. When I worked at Macy's, I had another one. Macy's is a mess now, but when I worked there, wonderful people, loved that place. Everybody in the UX department in 2016, 2017 was great until the new leadership came in and everything changed. My manager, Ben, was one of the best bosses I've ever had. Fantastic. I should also mention Norville when I freelanced at Roxa. Norville is a freaking powerhouse, another true unicorn. Hello, Julio. Live on LinkedIn. And Macy's people were great, and luckily most of them have since escaped. I've heard only a few are left from my era because the new leadership created as Liz says, a U exodus. So I work a lot. I work hard. I'm driven. I'm dedicated. I don't always get it right. I'm always learning. I'm always learning new things. I'm always learning better ways. I can be stuck in my ways about some things, but I always want to try to be as objective as possible and keep learning. There are times I'm very happy to listen to other people, and I love being wrong because that's the only way you can learn. And there are times where I'm not as good at that, but I think that's probably all of us. So my goal is to help people with the things that I know that I've learned, and some of the balls that I bring to what I do. You know, I also got lucky in that I grew up in a family of lawyers, and I think a lot of us who work in UX feel like mini lawyers in that we have to go into these places, deal with people who are not happy to see us, and tell them things they don't want to hear. So I got lucky that I grew up in a household that rewarded good debate and good arguments. And I was taught, don't fight for something if you don't have clear facts on your side. Don't argue from emotions. You have to stand up for things if you can show that you have the facts on your side. If you can't show that you have the facts on your side, you know, work to get them or shift. So I got lucky that a lot of my childhood lessons played and my natural personality played well into this. My parents always gave me math puzzles, word puzzles, riddles, problems to solve. So that was just the environment in which I grew up, in which you were very rewarded for intellectual problem solving. You know, Marisol says her life is very similar. Yeah, my father was an attorney and my mother was a math teacher. And the rest of the family were all lawyers because dad married the boss's daughter. So um, uh, I have a unique upbringing. I was also never pooped on for being a girl. I didn't have those problems where anyone was like, you're a girl, you can't do that. You know, I got lucky that I was raised in a place where nobody treated me like that, or at least nobody treated me like that and got away with it. And where my parents weren't rich but had a little bit of money and could support some of the things that I wanted to do, like learn computers, get a computer. You know, I had a Apple II Plus in 1985. So, you know, it was really a combination of things. But I think it was mostly a lot of what my natural personality is. And my natural personality is fight for people. And I think you have to have that to be great at UX. You have to really want to be that unpopular person who's going to show up and go, I'm sorry, but based on what we know about our customers, we have to go in this other direction. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. They're not comfortable with confrontation. They're not comfortable with public speaking or presenting themselves. It really takes a lot of balls and a lot of natural personality aspects and some other stuff you can learn along the way, the skills you can pick up, the cognitive psych information, I think, to put together a good UX professional. There are people out there who are better than I am. I'm not trying to say I'm the best. I think I'm pretty darn good. I've got a great track record. As Larry would say, scorecard baby. Scorecard baby. I've got a good track record and some things I can prove. You know, I've clients who kept things the same way for 10 or 20 years, not because they were so damn pretty, but because they worked. And Larry's got a lot of those stories himself, but on a much bigger scale. This is Larry Marine. Follow Larry Marine. Any questions? I know I've been talking for like 2 hours now, I think. Didn't even finish my protein shake and it's bedtime. But if anybody has any questions about my history, my past, my life, my career, I will absolutely answer these openly and honestly. I don't have any secrets. And you guys keep asking me in places, you know, how did you end up in here? And because someone asked me today, like, gee, your LinkedIn only shows your work history back to 2012. You know, you've only been doing this 7-8 years. And the reality is that I think I'm starting to face some ageism. I am 47, turning 48. I did let some of my gray hair grow in. Hopefully it's dignified and not too old. And the advice has been, take your college graduation year off your profile and your resume, because then they can tell how old you are, and only show the last 10 years of your work history, so that they don't see how far back your work history goes, because mine really does go back to about 1995, if we really start at the beginning. 2012, obviously 2011 is when I got that first job in San Francisco working for that startup. I could have started there. I started 2012 with the Sony Wells Fargo stuff. So it's not that I've been doing this for 8 years. I've been doing it extremely formally since 2012, and rather informally before that. And you can feel free to disagree with me. You can say, no, Deb, I don't think your previous work really translates to UX. You're lying to yourself. That wasn't UX at all. Okay, I get it. We all have different definitions of this. I believe that I've been doing UX all this time, and that I just didn't know what it was, but I approached websites from a strategic perspective, thinking about customers' natural behaviors and psychology. So I had some good things at their core. And again, I had the monster track record. So, oh man, I remember I was being written about in all kinds of books. I'm in a book, I think I have it in the storage room. It's like Netscape 1.2 or something. Netscape, it was like some book and it came out in like 98. It was called something like Netscape Navigator and Beyond. And it was like some book that was going to teach you about surfing the web and using Netscape as your browser. And I somehow ended up in there, and I don't even remember how or why. I was in eBay for Dummies. I got interviewed for that. I popped up in a whole bunch of places over time. I popped up at PayPal's developer conference. I spoke at PayPal's developer conference in 2010. My topic was called branding and marketing, but when I watched it back last year, it was like, oh, there's like some UX stuff in here, and I still totally didn't understand UX, only a little bit at the time. So, yeah, you know, I called it branding and marketing, and my whole talk is about like, things that you as developers should adjust based on what your customers are likely to do. Well, Marisol, maybe you're not facing ageism yet. You just got a new job like 2 weeks ago. You know, you're killing it. I can't get an interview. So, you know, luckily I've got some of my private corporate training and stuff that move me along, but I would love to have a more regular job, but now I'm remote and I'm old and grizzled. And my style's not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm the best me I can be. So I'm sorry that this ran like 4 hours long, but I know some people have been asking, and I just don't think there's a short version because I feel like for my path, there's too many things that played into it that are important to know. Because obviously, I came up in a time when I applied to college, you were either like a computer engineer or that was pretty much it. I mean, I applied to college in 1988. I don't remember seeing anything in the college about human computer interface or, well, you're also 47, Marisol. Oh my God, you're killing it. That's it. I'm moving to Panama. No, I'm kidding. I'm happy where I am, but I should visit and you should visit me. But I think there's a lot of pieces from my life and my personality and other stuff that just kind of all magically at some point kind of came together and converged at various points, but especially around like that 2008, 9, 10 kind of time. Yeah, you were lucky, but you're more than lucky. You're good. They're not going to hire you because you're lucky. They're going to hire you because you're good. So you must be good. But I haven't seen your work. I'm just assuming. So anyway, it's Friday. Everybody have a great weekend. If you're watching this later, thanks for putting up with this long video, but I just felt like it's a story that I would like to tell, and it's weird in places, and it's got for people my age, a lot of it's going to sound familiar. I think a lot of us were doing UX stuff and we're influenced by web design, web strategy, psychology before we knew more about UX. I hear a lot of people my age say, well, I was doing UX before I was doing UX. And I say, yeah, I get that. Um, Obviously, if I were 23 now, I would just be going to college for HCI. But I went to college thinking I was going to be a genetic researcher, and I only got here because I did so badly in those classes. And that's why sometimes I tell people, if you are going to UX school or taking UX courses and you're doing badly, you can keep trying, but it might also be that message to you that this isn't right for you. I'm glad I got the message that science and medicine and genetic research and lab work weren't right for me. Do I believe I could have done them? Sure. Do I believe I could have been good at them? Why not? I'm usually pretty good at stuff that I put effort into, except social studies. But I'm glad that I was bad at those because that said to me, you're not going to do this. And I graduated college having no idea what I was going to do. I got a degree in music and I knew I wasn't going to be a music teacher. I knew I wasn't going to work in, I thought about working in the music business, but I didn't think that was going to be a life thing. I thought it was too unstable. I didn't know what I was going to do. It all just kind of came together by accident between meeting the guy who gives me Photoshop and the other guy says, go look at this thing called the web. And I run into CompuServe in 1992, Google CompuServe, if you weren't alive in America in 1992. I've just had some right places at right times. And for those of you still looking for those jobs and those chances, you'll get them. You will find your Lisa the recruiter who will take the chance on you. You will find Martin, the first boss, who will believe in you and give you a shot, even if your work is mediocre, at times great and at times mediocre. You will find those people. Keep looking. They're out there. Keep looking, keep getting better. That was a period in my life where I did not stop learning. I kept pushing myself with Axure and pushing myself with what I could learn about research techniques and testing techniques so that by the time I was working at that agency in 2013, I knew how to run moderated and unmoderated tests. I knew how to do user interviews and create personas from them. Honestly, I don't remember where I learned that. So I'm having a little trouble answering that question because I don't remember reading any books and I didn't take any classes. And I think I just must have soaked up everything I could find online. And luckily, there was a lot more high quality content online at the time. Now, of course, with social media and Medium and blogs, you can get a lot of low quality content. But I think at the time, the people who were writing about this stuff were at a much higher level. So again, I think this is 12 hours long now. Thank you everybody for joining in. If you have any last questions, post them now. I'm going to archive this on YouTube so that if somebody says, Debbie, how did you get into UX? I'm going to tell them to settle down with a giant bottle of vodka. No, I'm kidding. I don't drink. Settle down with a 20-ounce protein shake and give a listen. Last chance for last questions. And thanks to the dozen or so people who suffered through this long story. You guys are too kind to have sat through this. Or maybe you thought like, ooh, it's Friday. I can pretend I'm working. But I'll really watch Deb. And that is the story. So please, everybody, follow me on LinkedIn. Get in touch if you think, my goal now is and always has been, pay it forward. What can I do for you? I can't mentor everybody for free. I can't give everybody my time for free. There just isn't enough of me. But I want to help everybody that I can. I give lots of advice. Some of it's going to resonate with you. Some of it's not going to resonate with you. Some of it's going to feel like it's a match. Some of it's going to feel like it's not a match. Some of it's going to sound like other advice you got. Some of it's going to sound different from other advice you got. I can only tell you that whatever I put out there is based on my knowledge, my experience. I interview people a lot. I speak to people a lot. People tell me their problems a lot. So sometimes I'm representing my own voice and sometimes I'm representing many voices of others. So if there's something you think I can do for or with you, please be in touch and tell me how I can best help you. Again, can't give away a lot of my time for free, but would always want to try to see if there's a way I can help people. That's two things I can't do, actually. Can't give away a lot of my time for free, and no, I don't know how to get you a job. I can look at your portfolio. I can try to mentor you. I can try to do mock interviews with you. Again, I can't do all that for free. But no, I don't know how to get you a job. I don't know how to get you an apprenticeship. I don't know how to get you an internship. I don't know how to get you any of these things. But if I can help you in some other way, I would try. So let me know. Thanks, everybody. It is my bedtime. I'm rolling straight into bed. It's 8:30 at night where I live in Europe, and that is it. I'm officially out of energy. Everybody have a super weekend. Thanks again for putting up with the longest story in town, and I will catch you all next week for real office hours. I didn't want to do this as office hours because I want to answer your questions instead of yap your heads off with my story. So see you for office hours on Tuesday, if not before. Cheers.